podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. This is a special live pod, post-game, instant reaction to the USA-Jamaica Nations League win from the U.S. 4-2. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire, and joining us, the man, the myth, the legend. I've lost count on how many times he has joined us on the State of the Union. The great Stu Holden. Welcome, gentlemen. Sometimes we start this off with what we've been watching and all that kind of stuff. But since this is a live pod, and since we know what we have been watching, especially over the last 2 hours, is a U.S. emphatic win over Jamaica, I'd like to jump right into the game. But first off, welcome, Mosse, and welcome, Stu. How you guys doing, all right?
I'm doing
great. Mosse, what about you, buddy?
Good start, talking over each other. I will be, at the end of the pod, mentioning some of the things I've been watching because I've got a couple things. But I agree with you, Lex. Let's get right to it.
Don't bore us. Don't bore us. Get to the chorus here. So I think, on paper, this result looks good. And I think on the field, the result certainly at times looked really good and really, really interesting in terms of the way that the U.S. went about this game. All right, first off, starting 11. In goal, Matt Turner, and really Pochettino kind of rolled it back from the first game, the away game. Robinson on the left-hand side, Tim Weah and McKenzie continuing in that center of the back four. Scally continuing on the right-hand side. Tessman again getting a start. Weston McKennie there. Then the interesting thing was up top and with the attacking types of players. Pulisic moves inside into a more central type of role. Weah, who for years now we have seen him patrol that right-hand side and coming back from his suspension, goes to the left-hand side. And Musa, at least in the starting 11 that we saw on paper, went back to that now right-hand side that he has occupied over the last few games. Pepi continues on. We know he scored in the away game and now continues on here tonight as the starter up top. First, I'll go to you, Mosse. Anything right off the bat when the 11 came out that piqued your interest?
Well, as you mentioned, the way you just went over it was how it was drawn up. But we're finding that Mauricio Pochettino's formations are very fluid. The most interesting wrinkle for me tonight was how much time Anthony Robinson spent in the middle of the field. He kept drifting over there with different players occupying his space at left back, including Christian Pulisic at times in the first half felt like a left back. So it's very interesting. And he was doing all this under the watchful eye of Greg Berhalter and Bruce Arena. So maybe Pochettino wanted to flex his tactical muscles a little bit. But yeah, we're going to have to get used to the fact that once the game starts, figuring out what formation the U.S. is actually in is going to be an interesting exercise under Pochettino.
Well, let's slow our roll just for a second here, because it always has to be, I think, said when you are playing the opposition. You only play what's in front of you. You're playing a Jamaican team, also a Jamaican team that was depleted because of passport issues. So when Jedi Robinson basically gets carte blanche to go wherever he wants, and he does that, to your point, Mosse, he showed up in all sorts of strange areas that traditionally you would never see a left back, albeit a left back that certainly pushes forward, occupy. Now, when he was there, I kept thinking to myself, what if they were playing a better team? First off, would Pochettino have done it against a better team? Secondly, if he had done it against a better team, would they have sussed it out immediately and caused problems? Because there was a time where we were not playing with anybody in that left-hand side. Stu, let's go right to that, because I think when it first showed up on the field, that was something that caught everybody's attention.
It did, because I think typically we've seen Anthony Robinson, if you think about his skill set and what makes him so good, it's his ability to get up and down the left-hand side with speed, physical capacity that's the best on the team by a long shot. So he can run up and down. He used to basically think that the left side was all Anthony Robinson. What I'll counter with you, Lex, is that this isn't just, I think, wanting to see Anthony Robinson in the middle of the field. I think it was also a recognition that Jamaica's best player, Leon Bailey, was the right winger. So all of a sudden, if you bring Anthony Robinson inside and Bailey doesn't want to defend him because he doesn't, and he wants to try to hang out there and attack the space, you force their best attacking player into a decision defensively. If he doesn't go with him, which he didn't, then Robinson had so much time and space. He ran the game at times in the middle of the field. And then then Bailey was caught between, do I defend, do I attack? And really, Bailey's only effective when Jamaica have the ball. They didn't have the ball because the U.S. had an extra man in midfield and were so effective. So I thought this was a genius move by Mauricio Pochettino. It allowed Pulisic to go wide, to come inside. Tim Weah then playing on the left. He wanted to come onto his right-hand side, and I thought that he was just good all game long. And we'd only really seen Tim Weah as a right winger for Greg Berhalter, so it was nice to see him inverted at times, even though really he didn't have the overlapping run of Anthony Robinson. But to your point, I do agree. This was a weaker opponent. This is not the Jamaica we'd started to see over maybe a cycle ago, and they really didn't test the U.S. until the second half. The game opened up a little. I think Pochettino will be a little disappointed with some of the goals they conceded.
Yeah, so when this 11 came out, I continue to feel that Tim Ream in the back, if he is not being looked at from Pochettino as a real starter and a possibility for 2026, then I don't want to see him on the field. And yet he continues to get the start. I know it's in his home town and all that kind of stuff, but again, he gets that start. As I've said before, I don't think that Scally and McKenzie are great players. I think they're passable, but passable is not something that we need in order to be successful in 2026. And I'll talk a little bit more about perspective, because we see these games now and our eyes are to 2026. At least that's how I'm watching it. Weston McKennie still was a force here. You cannot convince me again that Musa is a wide player. I just think, and even at times tonight, especially in that second half, you saw him get in that midfield. So don't try to convince me there. Up top, Pepi. I'm interested in and we're going to talk a little bit more about Pepi later on, but I'm interested in now 2 goals in both of the games that he has started. We know he's not starting a lot over in Europe, but he's come in with an eye to 2026. How did you think he played, not just tonight, but over the course of this window here? And is he now taking that spot, Mosse?
Yeah, I think he's one of the big winners of this window, scoring in both games, and his movements open up space for other players. I know we're going to talk about his club future in the AskAlexi segment, but at the international level, I think he really grew in influence here, with obviously taking advantage of Balogun and Sargent being out. Conversely, Brandon Vasquez came on and missed some easy chances. So certainly between those two, Pepi's stock, I would say, is much higher right now.
Stu, just quick thoughts on Pepi before we'll talk about him later, but go ahead.
No, I've been super impressed with Ricardo Pepi over the last 2 games especially, and then even going back, he's starting to pick up a bit of form again at the club level. And look, he's come out publicly and said, I don't want to be a super sub. I don't want to be labeled a super sub. Well, the only way to change that narrative is to play well enough to be in the starting lineup. And he's behind a talented player in Luke de Jong at his club level, so that was a challenge. But yet when he was on the field, he scored goals. For the national team, it was always either Balogun or Sargent or anybody but Pepi post the qualifying cycle. But he's done everything he can in his moments on the field. It's not just his finishing. We know he's a good finisher, but his hold-up play has been really good too, dropping underneath the center backs, creating space for players to run in behind him. And I think he has a lot of the tools, clearly, that Mauricio Pochettino values in a number 9. Number 1 is going to be always, can you put the ball in the back of the net? Lex, you rightly always say it's the hardest thing to do in the game. He's done that effectively. But the other parts of his game, the pressing, that's improved. And I think getting some direction from Pochettino has been important to understand the way that they want this team to play, which, again, Anthony Robinson in the middle of the field, when the ball turned over, he was the first one there winning the ball back. So pretty impressive for the United States, especially that first 45 minutes was almost flawless.
Yeah, so Pepi gets his goal, Weah gets his goal, Pulisic with 2. I mean, the Pulisic first goal, that was in the air a long time, and there was a lot of calculation that you could see going through, and he took it wonderful with his left foot. That takes a lot of concentration and obviously a lot of skill. The celebration, the goal that that created a million memes or gifs out there. With the Trump dance and everything. That it was interesting that they didn't show that in the highlight on, if you're watching it on Max or TNT out there. But I'm sure that is going around the internet, says they say right now. But I thought, just from a pure soccer perspective, it was wonderful the way that they created that goal, and obviously the ball from Weston over the top and the timing, and then the skill to pick it out of the air. I thought Christian Pulisic tonight was wonderful, and not just scoring the goals, to your point, showing up in different places. And there was just a little something different in the way that they played. And again, you got to be realistic because of the opponent and who they are. And you have to wonder, could they have done these same things against a much better type of opponent? But again, I think Pochettino is using every opportunity he has to kind of try out some different things, to have that in his arsenal so that when 2026 comes about, he has as many different looks, formation-wise, personnel-wise, in his back pocket to make the proper assessment. Anything else stand out to you, Mosse, when it comes to this game?
Well, just on Pulisic, I'm not sure I agree with him being awarded that second goal. To me, that should have been an own goal. But nevertheless, he is creeping up on our good friend Eric Wijnaldum, the U.S.'s all-time scoring list. That's the next player he's going to surpass. We'll see how Eric reacts to that. But yeah, Pulisic, McKennie, who assisted both goals, and Anthony Robinson, they look and feel like the three best players on this team. They just play with a confidence that it really comes across. And another player who I think was one of the big winners in this window is Tanner Tessman. I love his game. To me, he's ahead of Johnny right now in that number 6 pecking order. I just love his passing. He moves the ball around so crisply. His defensive positioning is good. So to me, he's another player that impressed me in these two games that I think probably scored a lot of points with Pochettino.
Yeah, Mosse, we had him on our list at Mallorca many years ago, and we weren't able to get a jump on him before he went to Europe. I'm a big fan of Tessman. I'm with you. I just think that he's got the skill set. He's got the size. He's got the passing ability, left and right foot. He's got the range to get around the field. He needs to keep playing games at a high level, but you can already see his levels improved over the past, couple of months since being in Ligue 1. I want to also point out the way in which we scored the goals. So we talked a lot about the U.S. in possession. Goodness, I remember the Nations League semifinal, the last time they played Jamaica. We all went to the game, Lex, down in AT&T Stadium, and Jamaica just bunkered in front of the goal. U.S. couldn't find a way to score. Jamaica had scored an early goal in that game. The difference, though, I felt today, especially, it was a different game. It's a different lineup, different circumstance, but it was... when Jamaica attacked, how quickly the U.S., when the ball turned over. I remember there was one moment, I wrote it down. I think it was the 23rd minute. Mauricio Pochettino's up on the sideline on the bench, and he's screaming, forward, forward, forward. He wanted any time that Jamaica was out of defensive shape for his team to play forward passes, quick transitions, knowing what the U.S. are capable of with the speed of Weah, McKennie, Pepi, Pulisic, and those goals, guys, I've watched them back a couple of times already. They showed it on the broadcast and again online. Just beautiful finishes, 1-2 touch passing, runners off the ball, cutback ball. Even to your point, Mosse, Tessman was at the heart of the second Pulisic goal with even the pass that initially opened up the play, but then even the awareness to dummy the ball to let it run through his legs, and Pulisic finished it off. So as nice of start to finish goals I've seen from the U.S. in a while, actually.
All right, so this was not only kind of an assessment of these players and this team, but this was also a continual assessment of Pochettino, especially in a competitive environment here. So if we're grading Pochettino relative to this window, because, look, job done when it comes to the actual results that they got, job done when it comes to the tournament that is Nations League and advancing, which is important. And I also think job done in terms of providing some different looks and doing some interesting things that get us thinking about possibilities going forward. So I'm going to give him a solid B+ for the window. Mosse, what are you giving him?
Yeah, I agree. B+, A-. The only issue for me is at center back, because I agree with you, Lex. That's a problem area for me, and he hasn't done anything so far to really address that. He's playing the same guys that Berhalter played. And the Tim Ream one is a bit of a head scratcher given his age and his prospects for being around in 2026. So the only issue I have with Pochettino right now is I think at some point he's going to have to really address that center back position to figure out, because the few times that Jamaica actually pushed forward tonight, they had some success. They scored 2 goals in the second half. So I think there still are some question marks there for sure.
Stu, what do you get?
Yeah, I'm just not sure what to make of the center back position, guys, because look, he's made Tim Ream the captain as well, even in the last game. And so I don't think that Pochettino feels that Ream's out of the picture for 26. I just don't. And he's going to be, I think, 38 by the time the World Cup, maybe 39 by the time the World Cup rolls around. I don't think that should be our starter. And I'm not making a direct comparison here, so don't blow up the internet when I compare Pepi to Tim Ream, but we did just see some older, experienced center backs playing well in the Euro. So I do believe that Ream could have a role to play, but I'm not entirely confident that should be a starting center back out of a back two if we're playing with two center backs, even though we really defend with three so far under Pochettino when we transition. But to me, that also is sending a message to the rest of the pool. It's like, hey, guys, let's go. You want to play in this team? This is the best guy right now. This is not a development pool. This is the national team. You develop at your club. I can help you along the way when you're in camp, but get on the field, make an impact, and show me that you're a level that's better than Tim Ream. If not, Tim Ream's going to start. And it doesn't fill me with confidence, McKenzie and Ream against some of the best teams in the world, I'll be honest, but I think still Tim Ream's our best center back. And that says a lot about the pool.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, is that it says a lot, and that if we show up in 2026, and as good as Tim Ream is, and we all love him, but if you had told me that in 2026 we would be looking to start Tim Ream for the United States men's national team in this World Cup at home, I would have said, well, we've screwed up somewhere along the line. And I know that's not the nicest way to talk about Tim Ream, but that's just the reality. And I guess Tim Ream's a smart guy too. He would probably say the same thing. And, he has taken this opportunity and he's been given great performances over the years. And if he is the best that we got, is that enough? And you could say that for a lot of people. Mosse, to your point, when it comes to the center back position right now, I still think that there's a goalkeeping situation with Matt Turner. So there's a competition going on there. There's a center back question when it comes to the center back. We don't know if Serginho Dest is going to get back from that right back position going forward. I think that, Gio Reyna might have a say to this come sometime in the future, and certainly Tyler Adams will come back at a certain point. So those are good problems to have. Those are champagne problems to have. But I still think up top when it comes to Pepi and that number 9's position, I know we got, Sargent waiting in the wings and Balogun waiting in the wings. I still think there's a competition there. Stu, you didn't give a grade. Mosse, you give it A-. I give a B+. What do you got?
I'll go an A-.
You got an A-.
All right. Yeah, look, clean sheet on the road was almost as under the circumstance. I know they're a little fortunate at the end, but
that's all right. Yeah,
we haven't won in Jamaica many times, and even on the road in CONCACAF under Berhalter. So
I'm a hard grader, though. I'm one of those teachers that you got where you got to really fight for it. Mosse, you want to take us through some other stuff when it comes to Nations League?
Well, first off, we're going to keep it moving tonight, but remind me on a different show to tell you about my losing my passport in Mexico a few years ago when I was there for a wedding and having to sneak back into the United States, because it's a cool story. So in light of the Jamaica Michigas tonight,
that shouldn't have been too hard given the circumstances, Mosse. All
right. Elsewhere,
you couldn't resist.
Elsewhere in the CONCACAF Nations League. Right now, Panama leading Costa Rica 2-1 in the second half and 3-1 on aggregate, so they are well on their way to advancing. Tomorrow, Canada will look to finish off Suriname. They lead 1-0 on aggregate. Leg 2 is at BMO Field. And Mexico will look to overturn a 2-0 deficit against Honduras in Toluca. The big story in that first leg, former Mallorca boss Javier Aguirre hit in the head with a beer can thrown from the stand that split his head open. He was bleeding. Stu, I know you still are in touch with him. Did you text him about that? Anything you can shed some light on there?
I just sent him a note saying, hope you're okay. It made its rounds around our, group chats in Mallorca as well. And even in Spain, they could not believe that stuff like projectiles like that were thrown at coaches. And it's a terrible scene, though. I've played down there before. There's little to no security that's preventing things like that. I know Aguirre's catching a bit of some comments as well for his actions. He's an entertainer. He's a showman. He knows how to get under the crowd's skin a little bit and plays into that. But nothing that he could do, even warranting back to the crowd, deserves what he got. And if you saw that clip right there, I mean, he took a full beer can to the head. And by the way, kept walking with blood just dripping down either side. Just disgusting scenes in Honduras. I didn't catch the full sanctions that they're going to receive, but Mexico also in pretty big trouble, down 2-0. And that might end up being the least of their issues as they head back to Mexico to try to turn that thing around.
Yeah, don't throw stuff on the field. Just don't do it. It's a bad look. It's dangerous, and it makes you an asshole. Okay, regardless of however angry you are, whatever the score is, whatever the situation is, it's just never warranted. To your point, he played it off like a boss. Let me tell you. I mean, he took that thing, and he tasted and felt the blood dripping down his head, and he just kept on walking, shaking hands, and doing whatever. And maybe, to your point, Stu, he's got bigger fish to fry here than the stitches that he's going to have in his head, because this is not a good look for Mexico. They had some opportunities, but ultimately they got to get it done now at home. And this is a Mexico team that we know is not like previous Mexico teams in terms of the quality and the talent and the depth. And yes, they were missing some players here, but they're going to have to get their you-know-what together if they hope to continue on here in Nations League. And I think more important, win back the hearts and minds, which I think is going to be different even if they do win. Win back the hearts and minds of the Mexican fan base with, again, we're 500 and something days away from the 2026 World Cup. So I still can see them overturning it back in Mexico, but Honduras is a good team, and this is not a great Mexico team. I think Canada's going to finish Suriname off when it comes to the home game. I think Panama will finish it off, and yeah, I'm good with saying that. Any difference in terms of the way that you guys see any of these results here, Mosse?
No, I mean, I still think Mexico go through. I think they're going to turn it around, and Canada obviously will finish off Suriname. So I think we're going to end up with the dream Final Four of U.S., Mexico, Panama, and Canada.
I'm going hot take. I'm going Mexico don't get through. I just what I saw, I expect them to get chances, but Honduras can hit them on the break. They're going to stuff that game up. That atmosphere inside that stadium is going to be pins and needles and pressure. And look, there's experienced players that Aguirre brought back. Memo Ochoa started in goal for them once again after being pushed out. And Raul Jimenez was back in, Orbelín Pineda. Like, they have enough talent, but how long have we been saying this still about this Mexican team? And I just think they still lack a confidence in their own ability to get it done at home. So I'm going Mexico out. I'm going Honduras surprisingly through.
Wow. Well, that could have ramifications for Gold Cup qualification going forward. We know Gold Cup, it is what it is, but it is a competitive tournament that the U.S. is going to be a part of, knock on wood, next year, and it's one of the last times that we will see the team in a competitive environment, albeit on not the greatest competition. So that's important. I will say, keep in mind that 26 is an expanded World Cup, and so some of these teams, when it comes to CONCACAF, looking at possibilities of doing something, and I'm looking at Suriname and these types of teams that in the past we haven't talked about. It's just something to keep an eye on as we go forward. And I hearken back to when Panama went to the men's World Cup for the first time, and we saw the tears and all that kind of stuff. It was just an amazing. And so there is an opportunity, given the fact that obviously the United States, Canada, and Mexico automatically qualify for 26, an opportunity for someone that maybe we haven't seen in the past to rise up and get an opportunity to go to a World Cup. Mosse, where should we go now?
UEFA Nations League, the group stage concludes tomorrow, but we already know the 8 quarterfinalists in League A. The 4 group winners were Portugal, France, Germany, Spain, and then the 4 runners-up were Croatia, Italy, Netherlands, and Denmark. So we're going to have a very tasty quarterfinals. The draw is Friday. A few games I do want to run through with you, gents. France claimed a 3-1 win over Italy at the San Siro. Adrien Rabiot with a double. How about this stat? First player to score 2-headed goals for France in a competitive match since Zinedine Zidane against Brazil in the '98 World Cup final. A match that caused a young David Mosse to cry. So Adrien Rabiot emulating Zinedine Zidane. But the big story for France, Kylian Mbappe left out of the squad in this window. Remember, he asked out of the last window, and that was very controversial back in France. And so a lot of people think Didier Deschamps leaving him out in this window was punishment. There's talk now he's going to be stripped of his captaincy. This is all occurring against the backdrop of Harry Kane and Ronaldo's comments about players not valuing playing for the national team enough. Stu, I'm going to go to you first on this. What do you make of this whole Mbappe-France dynamic right now?
Mbappe, a healthy fit, in form Mbappe that's bought in is undoubtedly in that French squad and is one of the best players in the world. We know what he can do. So you guys don't need me to tell you that. And in fact, I actually think this is a good thing. And also Deschamps, once again, revitalizing this French squad, I think, because one of the challenges that you have as the coach of France is that you have an insane amount of talent and you can rotate players. They could probably play a field 2 different teams of 11 in a World Cup and both would get to the quarterfinals and beyond. But this sends a clear message to Mbappe, and maybe it's going to benefit Mbappe as well with France. You take a little bit of responsibility away from him as a captain to be forced to be a leader and just let him play. But he's not in a good moment in his career right now. And I think that this is also Deschamps maybe trying to take some pressure off him too. He's struggling to find the right fit at Real Madrid. They're not playing well. There's lots of questions about, he's being played out of position. He doesn't look happy. Real Madrid don't look happy. Ancelotti's not using him in the right way. And then you fast forward that he's playing a lot of games too. He asks out of one window and Deschamps says, look, if you just want to treat the national team like you want to dip in and dip out and you don't really feel the same sense of pride of representing your country, then take another window off too. And if you change that and you come back motivated, you're a part of this team. And I think that's what you're going to see, hopefully, out of this, is that Mbappe comes back in and is motivated like he has been with his club team and kind of feels that passion again for the French national team, because it's good. And the fact that they won without him, I think, sends another message that, hey, we maybe don't need you as much as you think.
Yeah, I mean, Deschamps runs this team with an iron fist, and he has the cachet given what he has done. And, the juxtaposition between Messi, who tried World Cup after World Cup after World Cup and finally got there, and Mbappe, who has won and been given everything from a very, very young age. And I'm not saying that he necessarily takes it for granted, but it's almost a human condition to take it for granted at a certain point. And we sometimes forget that he is going through almost a growing process as a person and obviously as an athlete. But save the drama for your mama. This is France, right? This is what they do. There is always some sort of dysfunction, and I almost think that they thrive on it. They live on it. They have to have it. It's part of what they breathe. And so I'm not too worried about it, especially when you talk about depth. I mean, here we're dying for a number 9 or a center back and something like that. They can plug and replace on multiple layers, 1, 2, 3 different players. And that's a major difference between what you're talking about when it comes to the United States and certainly when you're talking about former World Cup champions and perennial favorites when it comes to France. But they're going to be just fine. I'm not worried about it.
But Lex, you hit on the key point for me. Mbappe is doing it in the opposite order as Messi and Ronaldo. He got the international stuff out of the way first, won a World Cup in 19, scoring in the final, scored a hat-trick in the next World Cup final. He's already won a UEFA Nations League. His big void in his career is the Champions League, which is why he moved to Madrid. And to Stu's point, he's off to a slow start there. He wants to get that sorted. So I do think right now his focus is much more on Madrid than it is on France. We'll see how long that lasts and where that goes. Incidentally, the other match in that group, Israel beat Belgium 1-0. That was a shocking result. Today, Croatia, Portugal 1-1. João Felix and Vardia with the goals. Ronaldo did not play in that one, but he did play on Friday in Portugal's 5-1 win over Poland, scored 2 goals, including a bicycle kick. We've talked about this before in the pod. Bad World Cup in 22, bad Euros in 24. All of us thought he might need to walk away from the national team. He's playing very well in this Nations League. Stu, has that changed your stance at all, or do you think this is fool's gold and relying on a 41-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo in 2026 would be a mistake?
Look, I don't think I ever said he needs to just leave the national team completely. You might be able to fact check me on that, but I just felt that his role needed to be reevaluated with the team. You produced this stunning board, Mosse, for our broadcast, which showed his lack of goals in the last couple of international tournaments. And that was, to me, as glaring as anything, in that these games, the level isn't quite as intense. A player of Ronaldo's quality to finish off plays, he's going to score goals wherever he goes. The guy could be 70 years old, stand in the box, and a ball's going to pop to his foot, and he's going to smash it in the top corner. I just felt that if they were continuing, especially under Roberto Martinez, to rely on him as the focal point of the attack, it just didn't work in the way that it needed to with the energy that is required to do that consistently at a high level. And you saw that in the lack of goals. But he's timeless, man. He and Messi they're gonna be in 26. As much as we both kind of thought, 22 is the last hurrah. Last time we'll see these guys in the World Cup. I think they're both going to be there, but I think they're both not going to be starters except for maybe a third group game, and they're going to be super subs. And it's just whether they can accept that and their egos can accept that.
Oh, that ego thing. Mosse, you want to move on to some CONMEBOL stuff?
We still got a couple of UEFA Nations League games.
Yeah, I know, but all right. We really want to do this? Okay, go ahead.
Yes. No, there were a couple of interesting promotions from League B. Stu, on Thursday, you and John Strong called England's 3-0 away win over Greece. That put them in the driver's seat. And then over the weekend, they promptly hammered Ireland 5-0. So England moving up to League A, which is what they wanted. They delayed Thomas Tuchel's start date until early 25 because they didn't want him dealing with the Nations League. Why they didn't see value in him coaching in this window, I don't know. And a lot of English journalists are perplexed by that too. But nevertheless, that's how they chose to play it, and it worked out. Now Tuchel gets to start with World Cup qualifying, and this opens up the possibility of an England-U.S. friendly next June, which has been reported. Now England does have that date available, so that would be exciting.
All right, so he doesn't get to take any credit for the 5-0 and 3-0 demolition and 8 goals for, 0 goals against, even playing a man down and all that kind of stuff. So he's got a lot to live up to. Yeah, again, I don't understand what the thinking was unless they were really worried about this, but obviously they didn't need to be.
You sound excited, Lex. I can hear it in your voice. The excitement is pouring through the microphone right now.
I mean, okay, all right. I mean, if this gets us a game against England, I'm all for it. When I say us, I mean the United States men's national team. I'm all for that. So that's a good thing.
And I texted Keith Costigan this. The last time the English inflicted this much pain on the Irish, Frank Kitson was involved. Now, that's going to go way over your heads. That's a early 70s Northern Ireland Troubles reference. Stu, perhaps if you watch the show Say Nothing instead of only watching Love Island, you'd understand that reference. One last one. Norway, 5-0 win over Kazakhstan. Erling Haaland with a hat trick. Lest anybody believe he only puts up crazy numbers at club level. 38 goals and 39 international appearances for Erling Haaland. And Norway get promoted to League A. We've talked about the possibility of Erling Haaland suffering the same fate as a George Weah or as a George Best, great player, bad national team, never gets to perform on the biggest international stages. Now, what we ultimately want is for him to qualify to Euros and World Cups. But nevertheless, getting promoted to League A of Nations League is a start. It means the next edition of this tournament, he's going to be playing competitive matches against the Germanys, the Spains, the France, so that'll be interesting.
It will be interesting, but we'll see if it ultimately results in what we all want, which is come the summer of 2026, Erling Haaland at the World Cup, yet another big star. We love to sell our stars, and from a goal-scoring perspective, there has been no one any bigger. But because of where he was born and because of who he plays for, we haven't gotten that. Maybe the expanded World Cup, although Europe doesn't get that many more spots, but maybe they find a way in. It would be great for him, and would be great for us when it comes to 5.
I think they're going to get it done, guys. I think you're going to see Norway in 26, which would be awesome. But if you go back to the Euro qualifying, they were in a group with Spain and Scotland, and it was actually a home game against Scotland where they were winning that game on an Erling Haaland penalty. They conceded 2 late goals at the end of that game in stoppage time to Scotland that basically cost them a place in the Euro, and they should have won that game. They're actually a better team, I think, from top to bottom than Scotland. And so if they can kind of get it together, and to your point, Mosse, playing more high-level games in Nations League A, that will help them in qualifying potentially. And I think Haaland is motivated to get his country to a World Cup and not be in that conversation with George Weah and Ryan Giggs.
And then finally, CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying. On Friday, Uruguay had a crazy win over Colombia. Manuel Ugarte scoring the winner deep in stoppage time. They surged up to second. That sets up the big game on Tuesday. Brazil will host Uruguay. Also on Tuesday, Colombia hosts Ecuador, and Argentina hosts Peru, looking to bounce back from that shock defeat to Paraguay last week. Stu, any of those CONMEBOL games catch your attention? I know you called the last Uruguay-Brazil match, which was in the quarterfinals of the Copa America.
Well, That Uruguay-Colombia game was awesome. My favorite part of this window was watching David Mosse watch Brazil over a laptop in the control room, suffering through that game against Venezuela. I didn't quite realize just how intense you got during those games, Mosse.
That was maybe the worst 15 minutes of my life. Lex, I'm watching the first 15 minutes of the second half of that game on my computer, and there's this amazing convergence of trolls around me, from Judy Boyd to Stu to John Strong to Johnny Wright, all of them peeking over my shoulder, rooting against Brazil. And it was during those 15 minutes that Venezuela equalized and Vinicius Jr. missed a penalty, and you were all laughing at me. I wanted the hole to open up in the ground and just fall in.
Hey, well, I wouldn't know anything about trolling, but when it comes to La Vino Tinto there, that was just announced that the U.S. is going to play them actually in 2025, and that's a good, in the past it might have been like, yeah, okay, it's Venezuela or whatever, but this is a good version of Venezuela. So again, the more quality opponents, even in the form of a friendly game, the better off the U.S.
That's probably going to be a January camp game, though, right?
Yeah,
Lex? Is that going to be a B?
But still, yeah, you never know, and we'll talk in a second here about Pochettino's attitude. Actually, that's probably a good place for us to go. Mosse, before we do finish up with CONMEBOL here, because of this peak and valley that is going on with you and this Brazil team, and just when you think they're out of the woods, they bring you back down to reality and crush your hopes and dreams here. Predictions on the Brazil-Uruguay game?
I think it's going to be a draw. Brazil's next 3 games, by the way, home to Uruguay, home to Colombia, and away to Argentina. So we better get our act together, because that's tough next 3 matches.
All right. I have more faith, as everybody knows, more faith in Brazil over the course of the years than Mosse does.
I'm not going to derail the pod here by going into your blind trust of Brazil, and Mosse just irritates him that you can't take a little peek behind the blanket and look that this is not the same Brazil.
No, I mean, I'm more Brazilian than Mosse when it really comes down to it. So, I mean, all right. Anything else there, Mosse, or should we head off to AskAlexi?
That's it. It's AskAlexi time.
Okay, let's go on to AskAlexi. And by the way, out there, if you are a listener or a watcher of this show, you will know that we have AskAlexi each and every show. It's the point where you send in your comments and your questions and concerns. And keep in mind that our handle out there on all the social media platforms, many of them that you are watching right now live, is SOTU with Lexi. Or you can call into our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. Mosse, what do the folks want to know today?
First up, a question on X. Chris Charles says, the pitch last night, when is CONCACAF going to require host stadiums to have a decent playing surface? This was in response to your what are we yelling about? It was in reaction to the U.S. game away to Jamaica last week. And yeah, it's an interesting one, because some people think that part of the charm of CONMEBOL and CONCACAF is the pitch conditions, and that it's elitist to criticize it. I know Vinicius Jr. made some comments recently about some of the pitches in South America that rubbed Stu the wrong way. At the same time, Stu is somebody whose career ended early because of injuries, and I'm sure he thinks player safety is important, and so sometimes people worry that these pitches could lead to further injuries. Stu, you want to go first on that, or Lex? I'll let Lex go. The segment is called AskAlexi, so...
Well, I'll turn it over to Stu here in a second here, but when you say pitch, Mosse, you mean field, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure.
Well, the guy said pitch. So
no, I know, exactly. I just wanted to translate for anybody out there that might not know. When it comes to the field, okay, I think it's important, and you mentioned elitist, snobby types of attitudes that we have, and I think it's very easy to fall into that. Now, Stu and I, over the years, have played on good fields and bad fields and everything in between. And obviously, any player would much prefer to play on a pristine field. But guess what? A pristine field costs money and requires resources. The other night, when the United States men's national team went and played in Jamaica, they were guests. They were guests representing the United States in a foreign country. In this case, it was Jamaica. And so when you say a good field, it might have different meanings to different countries and different cultures relative to what they have had in the past and relative to the resources that they have. And any U.S. national team player that has played for any length of time will recognize that inevitably you are going to go to other countries and cultures where they don't have as many resources. And their idea of a beautiful field may be very different than yours. And you can whine and scream and yell, and you can curse the ball and the soccer gods, and inevitably you will, because you will go to trap the ball and you will not judge it correctly because of the uneven part of the field or because of the divot or because of things that are on the field. And your opposition oftentimes will use it to their advantage. You know what? Stop whining. Stop crying. All right? You have to be able to adapt. And yes, we want minimum levels of field quality for safety and for the actual competition on the field, okay? But they're not all going to be absolutely felt perfect type of situations. And as a matter of fact, there is going to be disparity. And to your point, Mosse, there is some romance in that you have to appreciate, or at the very least, I think you have to respect. So the other night, it wasn't about the field, all right? The U.S. did what they needed to do, and yes, they could have played a whole lot better, and I do think that what we saw tonight was relative to the talent that the U.S. has and a field that made that talent shine that much more. But you know what? You are going to be in adverse situations, and Pochettino is going to have to see how his players react. And you're not going to face that when you ultimately get to the World Cup. But those types of tests and those types of trials and your ability to react as a player, the sooner you figure it out, the better off you are going to be. Stu, I'll let you take it from here.
What's left on that bone right there? I mean, I felt like you kind of nailed it there, buddy. Okay. I was going to go very similarly to your line of thinking there. I mean, look, I've played on some of the best fields in the world. The Emirates, when I played against Arsenal, was the best. I mean, I didn't even want to kick a ball there for fear of taking a divot. It was like a carpet. It was a dream to play on that field. But that is in the greatest league in the world. And the reality is, when you're in CONCACAF, when you're in different places in the world, there are limited resources, and they have limited ways in which they can allocate those resources. And quite frankly, a playing field that is used maybe 6 or 7 times in meaningful games over the course of a calendar year is not a priority when the cost of maintaining or relaying or watering or getting that field in pristine conditions takes money away from youth programs and women's funding and men's national team funding. I mean, everything. You have to think about just how limited the budgets are, and it's been a big push for CONCACAF and really making sure that those types of nations are funded in better ways. And I could go on and on about this, but I think, Lexi, I think you nailed on the head. It's all relative to what you're expecting and what you want. And if you look at it any other way, it is an elitist view to say that field is not good enough. That field is just as good or not better than anything that anybody could imagine in certain parts of the world. So it's one of those challenges. You deal with it. It's not ideal, but you just be thankful that you're getting to play soccer for a living.
Mosse, what else do the folks want to know?
Another question on X, a Lock Lord asks, if Pepi moves clubs, what are his top 3 destinations in your mind? We all think that Ricardo Pepi is going to leave PSV at the end of the season in search of greater playing time. I've heard everybody from Liverpool to Bayern Munich to Borussia Dortmund to Ajax mention. Some of those feel more realistic than others, but everybody assumes it's going to be within Europe. We know Matt Turner has moved a couple of times within Europe in search of playing time. This past summer, there were links with Weston McKennie to Cincinnati and Josh Sargent to St. Louis, and most people dismissed those. Of course, they're going to stay in Europe. A couple of years ago, Landon Donovan famously advocated for Christian Pulisic to come back to MLS and play for the Galaxy instead of joining AC Milan. And Mauricio Pochettino, with some interesting comments for U.S. players who are in Europe and searching for a new club, he actually encouraged them to come back to MLS. He said, if they do come back, they're going to have the same opportunity playing in MLS as those playing in the Premier League or in La Liga. What did you make of that, Lex?
Well, this also goes back to something I asked on X today. I was talking about Pepi, and I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. Do you think that Pepi has improved? And he's been there now almost 2 years in Europe, and we know initially didn't go great for him in Germany. It's going well for him in terms of scoring goals, but he is not in a starting capacity right now over in Holland. He is scoring, but scoring for the best team in the league. And he's playing in a league that, let's be honest, relative to these other leagues, I think is mediocre. And certainly you can compare it to different things. And he was scoring goals in Major League Soccer. All of that is to say is I don't know how good Pepi can be, but to answer that question I kind of asked earlier, if this is as good as it gets, I don't think that's yet good enough for the World Cup. And I'm not saying that he can't improve, but how much better a player right now is Ricardo Pepi relative to when he came over and left FC Dallas from Major League Soccer? All of that is also to say is that I like what Pochettino is saying. And somebody had a response to me when I talked about, kind of being flip about the fact that, all the MLS haters out there and all the snobs out there. It's different, and it hits different when Pochettino says it as opposed to somebody else. And yes, the messenger does matter when you are putting across a message like this. And there were a lot of people, I think, that were saying, well, he's just saying that. Well, if you believe that, then basically he's lying. And he's not giving everybody the same chance who plays in Major League Soccer. I take him for his word, and I do believe that he is trying to cast the biggest net. And I also believe that he looks at it and says, you know what? If it's good enough for Messi, it's good enough for a player that can play for me here on the U.S. team. Now, we'll see if ultimately that results in any MLS players being involved. But the fact that he is saying that, I think, is good. And take your tinfoil off right now for those of you that are screaming, yelling, and I'm sure that there are those that are out there that are doing that. I think that this is genuine. I do think that he looks at MLS as a proving ground and as part of the tent in terms of bringing players in. And I don't think that he will look any different if a player either is started and has played in MLS, or some of these players, to your point, Mosse, that aren't playing in Europe are actually playing week in and week out and hopefully playing well in an MLS capacity because they're not getting in Europe. Because all that matters from a Pochettino perspective is 2026. And he doesn't care how you mature and how you are playing soccer. He just cares, evidently, that you are playing soccer. Stu.
Yeah, I think there's a difference here between players that he feels. I think Mauricio Pochettino feels he's got a pretty good feel for the pool, 18, 19 guys, and you're going to see 3 or 4 guys continue to swap every camp. If you were saying to me, and I believe he's an equal opportunity guy, but I think there's a difference between wanting the guys that he feels are in his pool right now that comes to MLS and continues to play. I think they'll still get picked in the team like a Christian Roldan or Jordan Morris or those guys did, versus tell me there's a player right now that's American that's playing in MLS that you feel should be in this group. And
exactly.
That's the big difference. I just don't think there are right now. And it could be a goalie. It could be Patrick Schulte. It could be the Miles Robinson. It could be guys like that. I just don't see anybody. The best young players in MLS right now are not American. Yeah. And that's the difference. And then going back to Ricardo Pepi right now, it's a really tough one for him because the hardest thing when you're kind of a unproven young American potential to be a star guy is to get a move to Europe and to get a fit that's the ideal situation at the right type of club. And the reality is the teams that were willing to spend the money were desperate teams. And when he moved to Germany, it was Augsburg in the Bundesliga. He goes into a team with a big price tag, lots of pressure, no chances. The difference is he goes to a team now. He's at one of the best teams in the league. He's getting chances every week. He's a good finisher. He's going to score goals. So when you're asking me, Mosse, where do I think Ricardo Pepi should go next? I would say I would rather him value a team in a situation where he's getting opportunities to score goals as opposed to going to the best possible team he could go to. And I think right now a good league for him would be Serie A. Weston McKennie's doing well. Weah's doing well. Pulisic's doing well. It's almost in a way become kind of the new Bundesliga from 7 or 8 years ago when a lot of young American stars went there. And I think it's a little bit of a slower league in a way in which he could find chances and score goals. So I don't know. I'm looking at the table right now. Maybe a team like Bologna or Fiorentina or Atalanta. All good teams, and he's going to have to fight. But I think still teams that get good chances to score.
What about a team like like Mallorca in Spain, Stu?
What's the cost? What price are we talking? Lex, hold on. What do you say? What if he came back to MLS?
What if he came back to MLS? And again, answer the question: do you think that he is better than when he left MLS?
I think he's better.
MLS?
Yeah,
why?
For sure.
In what way?
I think where Pepi has gotten better has been his movement in the box, and I think he looks quicker, faster, fitter, I think because he's playing games at a higher intensity now. And I just think when you're playing at a faster speed, you start to see and feel the game a little bit differently. So I would say he's tactically advanced too. And I know, look, those are hard things to I'll pull up a couple clips maybe after you and I will go through it, but you don't feel he's improved. You feel he's the same player.
No, I think that he's improved, but I think it's just a natural progression that would have happened had he been continued on in Dallas or any place else.
No, I counter that completely. And whether he's physically or his skill is improved, I think having experienced what he did by moving from MLS in a situation that was comfortable, hello, Jesus Ferreira, and then goes to a team and an environment where, sure, he struggled. He went through a tough period. He missed out on the World Cup in 22 because of that. I think he's coming out the other side of that a lot stronger now and more of a confidence and belief in himself. So to me, that's a better player because it's a better version of yourself mentally, and he's improved a lot in that part of the game.
And he's scoring goals. And as you said before, it is the most valuable and most important thing. And nobody asks how. They just ask if you're doing it. And to your point, scored in both of these games. Even if they're not pretty, doesn't matter. As long as they go in the goal, that's the most important thing. We will see if someone like Pepi or someone like Matt Turner or anybody else says, all right, I got to be playing. We've just seen Pochettino say that I'm not going to look at you necessarily any differently, and I'm going to give you a chance like anybody else. If some of them actually take an MLS offer and come back as being part of the national team, but now playing in Major League Soccer, and we'll see how we react to them. We'll see how Pochettino reacts to them, and we'll see if they're still involved come 2026 going forward. Mosse, anything more on AskAlexi?
Quick update before we go to one for the road. Panama, Costa Rica is 2-2 right now. Panama still ahead 3-2 on aggregate, but it looked briefly like Costa Rica had gone ahead 3-2 on the night, and they would have had the advantage on away goals, although their third goal was apparently chalked off. So Panama holding on here in Panama City to try to advance, as the U.S. did tonight, and make it to the Nations League Final Four, which is at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles next year. All right, time now for one for the road.
Okay, well, thank you for setting that up, and thanks for everybody that's hanging out with us live here. And if you're listening to this later, thank you for listening and watching. When it comes to the State of the Union, at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road, more of a big picture type of view on something. And, someone over there on the X machine the other day was, when I'm asking people what they're yelling about, I get a whole spectrum of responses. And some of them have to do with soccer, some of them have to do with politics or life or culture and, music, all that kind of stuff. And what's his name? Crook Eddie over there on X said, I'm yelling about the U.S. men's national team fan base, and it seems to be gone, and there is nothing that can be done to get them back in time for the home World Cup. Well, I disagree that it is gone when it comes to the U.S. men's national team fan base. I will concede that we are in an interesting and very rare type of moment where we have already qualified and where we will have very few competitive types of environments to assess this team. And this is not just looking ahead to a World Cup. This is looking ahead to a home World Cup and all that entails. And, the excitement that is surrounding it, but also, again, the 500 plus days left before this World Cup. I think that there is a U.S. men's national team fan base that is dying to be inspired. And certainly some of them will have tuned in tonight, but a lot of the diehards would have tuned in tonight. But there's many more out there that we know kind of come into the tent when they're big games, big tournaments, and certainly they're nothing bigger than a World Cup. And for a lot of those people, they will have seen the fact that we didn't qualify for the previous World Cup. We did relatively well in the next World Cup. At least we got back to it. And they will see the failure of last summer in the Copa America, because that made headlines, and obviously the change of Greg Berhalter. And they'll be saying to themselves, well, are we really that good? Are we really as far along as we should be? And the answer, remains to be seen. But it's going to be answered in the summer of 2026. And so I do think that the fan base is there, but it needs to be energized. It needs to be excited. And I'm sorry, but there's going to be few and far between moments between now and 2026 to be able to do that. And so there is an element of, if you build it, they will come. And I do believe they will come in the summer of 2026. And this kind of takes the pressure off of Pochettino. But, there's nothing that moves people more than success and belief. One of the chants for the U.S. men's national team and for the U.S. National teams is, I believe that we will win. Well, it's not just blind faith. You have to kind of earn that belief. And this U.S. men's national team, I think, is going about earning that belief back. The women's team did it very, very quickly, by the way. The U.S. men's national team, I think ultimately it will come to fruition when it does in a positive way in the summer of 2026. But winning them back, I think, is going to be relative to this spectacle that is coming. Winning them back is getting them excited about what is to happen on and off the field, not just with the U.S. men's national team, but for the World Cup in general. And if you can't get excited for a home World Cup that is happening in the summer of 2026 and the vastly changed landscape that is American soccer, then there's something wrong with you. But from a personal perspective and from a soccer community perspective, it's also up to us to make sure that vastly changed landscape is on parade and that everybody sees it and everybody feels it. And then it's up to the players and Pochettino to prove that belief is there and that they deserve to be believed in. I'll let you two, clean this up, if you will. So, Stu, anything to say on this before we go?
Yeah, you're on one tonight, buddy. I love it. America's flown from ear to ear, and I think that when we think about the World Cup back in 2022, and there was a lot of excitement heading into that tournament because the U.S. missed out on 2018. It was a young, exciting group. They had some bright moments, and they made us believe in them, believe in the hype around this team, but also that we as an American soccer nation have continued to grow and to evolve. And I think that is the challenge heading into 26. And that's the fear, I think, that creates a bit of nervousness within the soccer community, is that if everything doesn't go perfectly in 26, then it was all a waste of time and none of this was worth it. We all know what a good U.S. performance in 26 would do to just energize this soccer nation. But I think the roots are there, win or lose, for this team. And you should be excited about what is to come in 26 and beyond 26. And it's not going to be like an explosion of fireworks. And when we come out of 2026 World Cup and when that final ball is kicked in the World Cup final, that everything in this country is going to look drastically different when it comes to soccer. It's not. We have a rich soccer culture. It's continued to grow. I'm excited about what this U.S. team can do. But I want to also feel a bit of that magic as well heading into that tournament. And then, so it's not just Pochettino's job, purely the results in 26. I do believe he has to create momentum, excitement, energy, everything that you can do, all hands on deck heading into that moment. So when that moment arrives, everybody's on that ship together, sink or swim, but we're going to be in this together. And I think that we should all be excited.
Amen. Amen. I know, Mosse, you wanted to let us know about some things you watched, right?
Yes, I'm going to save all my TV stuff for Wednesday, but I did go see a couple of movies this past weekend. Friday night, I saw Conclave, which I thought was terrific. And then Saturday night, I saw a Brazilian film, I'm Still Here, Ainda Estou Aqui, which is going to be Brazil's submission for Best Foreign Film at the Oscars. Very good as well. With Oscar season around the corner, I'm going to start to get going movie-wise. Also, one last thing. This past weekend was a new chapter in the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. They met in the Big Ten soccer tournament final in Columbus. Ohio State won 1-0 thanks to a goal by Parker Grinstead. So congratulations to the Buckeyes. Lex, I know you're a college soccer guy. It was a big crowd for this one. In the Michigan message board I frequent, where they usually only talk about football and basketball, they were talking about this game. So nice to see college soccer get some love.
That's wonderful.
My
wife's happy too, as is Stu's wife.
Yeah, she was screaming from the other room.
Oh my!
Clemson
goodness.
incidentally lost in the the ACC final on penalty kicks to Wake Forest. But the defending national champs, don't worry, we're gonna make our mark felt in the tournament. Let's go Tigers, baby!
Okay, well, Mosse off going to all those foreign films. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Stu, thank you so much for joining us again. How can the people find you out there?
At Stu Holden everywhere, Instagram. I'm active on the stories, as Lexi knows, on Instagram. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you got all sorts of interesting gadgets when you're doing the gram and all that kind of stuff. Mosse, anything before we go?
That's it.
All right. Listen,
Lexi, are you gonna do? Lexi, you gonna do the dance to take us off air?
Yeah. Listen. Keep reviewing. Keep downloading. Keep subscribing. Keep rating. Keep doing all the different things that you do out there when it comes to the State of the Union. This has been an absolute pleasure here on a live State of the Union. I'm going to go to bed with, Christian Pulisic doing the Trump dance and everything, and after his goal and all that kind of stuff. Unlike Stu, I believe that we're going to win the World Cup in 2026. We're going to win it bigly, my friends. Oh my gosh, young man.
From your lips. From your lips, buddy.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we'll talk to you again later on or next week. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week here. Enjoy your soccer. We're back to club stuff come this weekend as we finish up this window. Successful window for Pochettino and company, but 2026 is around the corner. It's going to come sooner rather than later. Can't wait. Until then, have a wonderful week. And as always, my friends, size the day.